Hello, welcome to the interview here on France 24. Well, long before the Arab Spring was even a twinkle in the eye of young revolutionaries in Egypt and Tunisia, my guest today was speaking out quite loudly and quite publicly in favor of greater freedoms and openness in Arab society. Sadiq Jalal, al-Azm, a Syrian philosopher, was briefly jailed in 1970 after writing a groundbreaking book that's still talked about today, in which he argued that the humiliation of the Arabs in the 1967 war with Israel was due, at least in part, to their own leaders' failure to rethink the role of religion in politics. Now, Arab regimes, he admonished, were using religion to mislead the masses and also to cling to power. And true freedom, he said, meant really breaking free of the straitjacket, if you want to call it that, of traditional Islamist thinking and adapting to the modern world. Welcome to our show today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. Your books, I just mentioned one of them, are still banned across the Middle East today,
Yeah,
40 years later.
Especially the book on critique of religious thought.
Tell me, in a nutshell, what is the major objection today? We've seen the Arab uprising. These are new regimes. Supposedly the dictators are gone. Why are your books still so controversial? Why won't they let them be read?
Well, the new regimes didn't, have any time really to update the lists of banned and unbanned things, of things that are permitted to be read and not permitted to be read. Of course, in many other parts of the Arab world where they are banned, no changes have really taken place. But still the book is available everywhere. I mean, if you want it, you get it. There's no question about it. And it has been there for half a century now. It never went out of print.
It never went out of print, but it's not available really just on the street to average.
Well, it's you go to your bookseller and say you want it, and then after 2 days you get it.
And then you get it. Let's talk a little bit about what's really happened. 40 years ago, you wrote these words. You were basically saying that the leaders need to think economically, politically, socially. They need to reform. If you don't reform, you're not going to change society. You won't get anywhere. Are you disappointed with the outcome so far of the Arab uprisings, what we call the Arab Spring, when you look at Mohamed Morsi in Egypt and Nahda in Tunisia, Islamist-based political parties?
No, really. I'm more on the optimistic side, in spite of characters like Nahda in Tunis,
Islamist party in power.
In power. First of all, I think both the Islamist parties in Egypt and Tunisia are clashing with what you could call "quote unquote" Arab modernity, and the fact that the state has done a lot in order to modernize Arab society, education, and so on. And they are finding it very difficult to retract on that.
To retreat on those principles.
And the other aspect, which makes me optimistic, is the resistance of civil society to the attempt of the new Islamist government to infiltrate or to undo things that a society like Egypt or Tunisia has become used to. And of course, the great example is in Egypt when Morsi became so impatient and issued that constitutional declaration of his, giving himself
more powers,
absolutist powers.
Yep.
And to me, it was a great event that half of Egypt erupted in opposition, in spite of the rhetoric of Sharia, the rhetoric of Quran, the rhetoric of religion, in spite of all
that most of society was behind the reform and
yes.
When you look at Mohammed Morsi, since you were talking about him, do you see a man who is mostly an Islamist, or do you see a man who's a politician who is trying to do his best to modernize, but facing more radical forces, religious forces?
No, I think I see somebody who, emerged out of the Muslim Brother and out of the atmosphere of within the organization of the principle of obedience, which they have, and having to learn how to deal with state politics, and he has not been particularly quick at adapting or learning and it takes a special talent and genius for a ruler in Egypt or a government in Egypt like Morsi's to clash at the same time, at one and the same time, with the Azhar and with the church at the same time.
All at once.
All at once. This has never happened before. Usually, you play one against the other. If you are a good politician, you balance, this
right,
kind of thing.
But he's taking both on.
Yeah, but taking both on and clashing with them, it takes talent, of a special kind. And this is, I think, it seems to me, this is, summarizes Morsi for me. Not to mention the army, the judicial body, the courts, and they lost.
He's facing quite a lot all at the same time.
Yeah, but for example, in the student councils, which they dominated throughout the Mubarak period, they have lost all their
right. They're losing their votes.
Control over them. Okay. Also in the various unions of could be doctors or
the Muslim Brotherhood is losing their voice.
Okay.
I know we're skipping a little bit here, but you're Syrian yourself. You taught for many years at University of Damascus, philosophy. You haven't been back to Syria in 2 years. The conflict there has taken a tragically violent turn. What do you think when you look at Syria today? Are you as optimistic? Could you be optimistic as you are with Egypt?
Yes, it depends on the issues. First of all, I don't think Syria is in a civil war.
You don't think it's a civil war?
No, it's not a civil war.
There?
And if you permit me, I will explain why. My measure of a civil war, which is close to us, was Lebanon. Okay, in Lebanon, the various religious communities armed themselves in order to attack each other and fight each other.
And is that not what we're seeing?
The Druzes were attacking the Maronites, and the Maronites, the Druze and the Palestinians were involved and so on. In Syria, until now, okay, the Druze are not ready to attack their neighbors, the Sunnah. The Sunnah are not preparing themselves to attack the Ala.
But we are seeing we are seeing sectarian conflict.
Oh, sectarian
Syria.
conflict.
It's a civil, but they're using the regime has been accused of using very heavy artillery. The rebels have also been armed. Reports of they've been armed. There are clashes. We see it every day in images.
But this is, we think of it, or I think of it, as a highly militarized minoritarian regime, okay, depending on a strong form of sectarian, let's say, solidarity, all right, which has a lot to lose if they are out of power,
which is
repressing a revolt of the numerical majority who are Sunni.
Right, but sir,
but that's not civil war in the sense in which in Lebanon it was a civil war.
Okay, no, I understand that your distinction, but it is a war in the sense that there is heavy artillery being used against a civilian population on the one hand, and that rebels are fighting back on the other hand with weapons of their own, and we are seeing the destruction in Aleppo, in Damascus.
I wouldn't call it civil war. I would call it an attempt at suppressing a revolution. Okay, rather than a civil war. Actually, I'm amazed how the Sunni majority is holding itself from taking revenge at the popular level. Namely, no Sunni village near where a massacre occurred or near it a massacre occurred. And they know I know there are lists of the gangs and the militias that came out from, say, Alawi villages to perpetrate those massacres.
Right.
People have been holding themselves. They never attacked these villages.
Very briefly, we're out of time here. Do you have hopes that you will be able to go back to Syria sometime soon? You haven't been back.
Not before the regime is over. Not before, you know, the top mukhabarat and so on.
The secret services, the police services. And you think Bashar Assad, his days are numbered, he will fall soon?
Well, I think he'll never be able to rule Syria.
A united
Syria.
Syria.
You know, after what we went through. Exactly how he falls is, you know, a more complicated problem.
A more complicated problem. Unfortunately, we won't have time to discuss that today.
Okay.
But Sadiq Jalal al-Azm,
next time.
Syrian philosopher, an author of some very groundbreaking and controversial books about the role of religion in society that poses some sharp questions about how Arab societies can reform. Books he wrote 40 years ago that are still very relevant today in the midst of a new Arab change across the Arab world. Thank you very much for being with me today.
And thank you for the, you know, the presentation and the compliment.
Thanks to all of you for watching the interview here on Cat.